Solar is proving one of the craziest and most reckless industrial bubbles ever. And it's fresh proof that China's communist leaders still don't understand how markets work. Hi, I'm Jasper Becker, and I've been studying China for the last 40 years. So ever since it started with its stimulus programs after 2008, the Chinese government has just chucked a wall of money at creating solar panel capacity and installing solar generating capacity at home. And the Europeans and Americans have also thrown a ton of money at the industry, but the Chinese have outspent everybody by a mile. Chinese central planners believed they had seen the future and they knew it worked. Unfortunately, the subsidies have distorted price signals, and that has meant that a great deal of capital has been misallocated into creating a massive overcapacity. The first victims of this blending splurge were European and American companies. They all went under: Solyndra, Sun Edison, Q-Cells, Solon, SolarWorld, Meyer Burger, and many others. But now it's the turn of the Chinese companies to feel the pain. Last year, China's solar panel value chain reportedly lost something like $40 billion as module prices plummeted by 60%, well below manufacturing cost. This year is not looking much better. Many billions in combined losses are being reported, and half the workforce is being cut. So something like 150,000 jobs have already gone. The overcapacity is quite extreme, and China, which has 90% of global manufacturing capacity in this sector, now has the ability to make capacity of 1,100 gigawatts every year, but global demand is no more than 500 gigawatts, and half of this global demand is coming from China itself. Little of this demand is actually real. It is entirely being driven by government spending and subsidies. So this has the effect of hiding the true cost of generating electricity from solar. It's quite difficult to calculate just how much the price signals have been distorted, because a lot of this spending is perhaps deliberately hidden by an opaque plethora of carbon taxes, tax credit, direct grants and subsidies, soft loans, consumer fees, and so on. But solar is certainly not cheap. And one of the main problems which still hasn't been solved and which is going to cap demand for the foreseeable future is that there is no commercially scalable 24/7 grid storage solution. And that means that the intermittent output either needs some kind of massive storage or huge new electricity grids to move the power from where the solar is being collected and send it to where it is needed, in this case from Western China to Eastern China. So what we are left with is just a small niche market of perhaps less than 1% of global energy demands. But governments are fighting like crazy to control this tiny market. The United States has raised tariffs, anti-dumping duties and countervailing duties, and expanded restrictions against Chinese origin goods, even when they're being assembled in Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, or Vietnam. The EU, India, Canada are also trying to shut out Chinese imports with high tariffs and various measures to protect local manufacturers. As US imports prices have doubled, import volumes have collapsed. A third to a half of Chinese exports could be at risk, turning what is already a massive overcapacity problem into tomorrow's solvency crisis. And when US prices rise, solar power often loses its competitive edge against natural gas or coal. And in Germany and the UK, on renewables have driven high retail prices to very high levels, which are crushing other industrial sectors. So I think we're looking at a future with many governments, including China, struggling with a huge sovereign debt problem. And so a bond crisis in one country or another could topple profligate governments everywhere. And I think this means that sooner or later, Western governments will have to splash and axe some spending somewhere. And these cuts might very well fall on solar. After all, voters would notice if you started cutting health welfare benefits, but they won't really notice or care if you start cutting solar energy subsidies and the solar energy industry, because very few of these jobs are at home. And so people are going to be asking themselves, why are we subsidizing jobs in Chinese factories at the expense of our own population?